Now, the psalmist, I love these words. We all believe in the scriptures, but we always emphasize, lift up one part or another. And here it is. He starts off by saying, happy are those whose transgression is forgiven. And I think, okay, folks, are you happy? If you're happy, then your confession this morning, that it's worked. Yeah, happy are those whose transgressions are forgiven. And yet so often, I think we get judged because we're, solemn-faced. We're worried about this, that, or the other. Lots to be worried about, with the news 24/7. Yeah, lots to be worried about. That was a different time. But the psalmist is saying, happy are those to whom the Lord imputes no iniquity, and in whose spirit there is no deceit. Are you happy? And then says, while I kept silence, my body wasted away through my groaning all day long. And I like that too. As I kept silence. Yeah. If we keep really busy, there is no silence. And boy, we have a lot of noise in our society. I got my phone in my pocket. I can play any kind of music that I want. I get dings, as you do. Hopefully we all got them turned off. But there's always something going on. You can spend forever on Facebook and any other thing that's out there. When you're driving, we got our radios, and you can hook up the phone to your cars now. There's just always something going on. And then, of course, we have so much money. We have many different homes and properties and things to buy and fix, right? We keep so busy. And then the older we are, we have children, and we help the children out, and we have neighbors. We can keep so busy. Silence. We have to work pretty hard, intentionally, about silence. So the psalmist, even though, written long time ago, still speaks an important truth to us. In silence, we listen to ourselves. And we're also aware that our body's going kaput because we're not listening to our body. We're not listening to anything. And we're not in good shape because I didn't listen, because I didn't create the silence. I didn't pay attention. So the psalmist is great in saying, be aware of what your body is saying. Be aware of what God is saying. Be aware, and notice this silence, and there's this physical effect. There's pain involved. He pays attention and then realizes, I need to confess my sin. He knew something was going on. And he did. And then he became happy. So we have a great illustration here of the psalmist that begins by saying, life's not good, folks. And in silence, well, I guess I'd like to ask you. I want you to really talk to me just for a second. Where do you like to go in silence? Where do you like to pray? Where do you like to meditate? How do you do that? Now, I know I'm just throwing this off top, so I'll tell you where I like to go. I like to take walks, go out my door and just walk in the neighborhood where, I can just walk. I like the evening, but I like mornings. But I tend to do more of that silent meditation at the end of the day when I can reflect and go, well, I messed up this, I'm worried about this, and just kind of find that silence and that peace, the reconciliation that I need, that wholeness. Pay attention what I need to do tomorrow or even that night. Okay, so where do you go? Backyard? Gardening? Yeah. Bedroom? Yeah. It's good to have that place and places. Sometimes I enjoy going to a park. I'm not sure which parks are your favorite, but just going there and walking. You have water not too far away. If you boat, walk along the river, ocean, bay, whatever. There's some great places for us to be in silence and to listen. Good things happen when we do that. So that's the psalmist, and says, be happy. So you can kind of check your emotions. There was this guy, Howard Rice, Reverend Doctor. He was a professor. He's passed away. He was moderator of General Assemblies for the Presbyterian Church. A really neat guy. He was in a wheelchair ever since I knew him. Howard told a story that he was sick for quite a while. He went to all the doctors. Nothing seemed to work. And I don't know the exact story, but I'm pretty sure it was in silence. Somewhere, sometime, he heard, "Take communion." He thought about it. He did. And he was healed. True story. That's the way God works. In silence, we hear what God says to us, and if we do it, our life is changed. And I love that story about Howard, because he was a very faithful, intelligent, gifted, kind of a mystery type guy, more known in the area of pastoral care. But what a great story. I'm not sure what your story is. You probably have one too. The power of silence and listening to the body. Now, the familiar story almost everybody knows about is the prodigal son, but I like the title, Faithful Father. As I look upon you, I suspect there's probably not anybody, but there might be one or two that was like that prodigal son. Oh yeah, I was that wild and crazy person. Lutherans, Presbyterians don't tend to be known for being wild and crazy. Going out. In fact, you're here this morning. You weren't out party last night, drinking and carousing. You made it here. You're looking good. You're all cleaned up well. Way to go. Yeah. Probably not very many of you are that younger son, but maybe you were, and things have changed. There's always an exception. I think most likely you, whoever you are, if you're here especially, you're more like the older son. You're the one that says, it's not fair. I have been the righteous one. I show up in church every Sunday. I have been on the council. I have done this. I have done that. It's not fair. Have you noticed that people who have been members of a church tend to have more power and authority than new members that come in? In the book, we're all created equal. But we all know the longer you're here, the more you know and you should be listened to. And sometimes those people who give more money have more power and authority. Now, I'm not saying that's true here. Oh, you laughed. Yeah, it's true everywhere. We have these rules of what is fair and what is right. Sometimes they get spoken, sometimes not. But we who are the older type, if we haven't learned about grace, if grace isn't really that strong in our life, if we don't pull it out, so many churches say, oh yes, grace is number one. And I found, I'm not sure that's really true. Churches are known for being very judgmental. Well, you didn't do it the right way. This way or that way. And we were talking earlier, and was it in Fiddler on the Roof? Remember the phrase, tradition? What happens if we don't follow tradition? We get in trouble. And we all have stories about people in the church. Things didn't go the right way. It wasn't fair. It wasn't right. People get all upset. That older brother is still alive. Henry Niebuhr, I'm going to mess this up a little bit, but in essence, I'm going to be right. He said, resentment is one of the worst of all sins. It hardens the heart, and we feel so righteous and right and we have the rules. And you can see the resentment in the older son. Resentment. He feels so holy, so right. And yet as we read through the story, we kind of see two groups. One, Jesus talking to the Pharisees and the scribes, to groups of people saying, I think you're like the older brother, and it's not going to turn out so well for you. I think he's right. And so we who tend to be more the older brother, we have to really watch out about the rules that were our shoulds and our oughts, so we don't have resentment towards other people. maybe that's the person you identify most with. But I'm hoping that who you really identify with most, because I noticed kind of an older crowd, right? Yeah, mostly. I'm hoping that you're way beyond those wild, crazy years where you did stupid things when you look back that seem so good. In fact, there's this story about a young man. And again, I might get the details wrong, so you can make it up any way you want. It's a joke, so you know to laugh at the end, right? Yeah. This young man, he was still in college, and he had an inheritance of $250,000. Yep. It wasn't too long. He was talking to his dad, and he said, "Dad, I'm broke." His dad said, "What do you mean you're broke? You had $250,000. What'd you spend it on?" And he said, "No, I'm not going to do the addition in my head so it comes out right." But he said, "Well, I bought a sports car for $60,000. I took my girlfriend on a Las Vegas trip for $20,000. And he goes and says, "Oh, we had a frat party. I paid for that. That was another $25,000. And I also took a trip over to Europe, and that was $45,000. And then he looked at his dad and said, I had $80,000 left, and I just frivolously spent it. Frivolously. Now, we would all look at it and go, "You did what?" We're beyond that. We've made our financial mistakes, and we've learned from it. So, who are we like? I'm praying, I hope we are like the Father. The Father who is more perseverant. In the latest hearing, what's her first name? I know it's Brown Jackson. What is it? Ketanji. Well done. It's a different name. Ketanji, she was at Harvard University. She was looking around. You could just see her young black woman on the campus at this huge campus of Harvard and looking around, and this other black female is walking towards her, and this other student could just read in her face her fear. And as she slowed down as they started to pass, and she bent over and whispered the word perseverance. That's what the Father did. He persevered. He never gave up hope on his Son. He looked forward, and even when he comes back from afar, he notices, that's my son. He knows. And he runs out there. Now, this is a story, and you guys know, you've heard this story so many times. You know that it was uncommon, and the Father really would not have done that in that culture. That's tradition. You don't do that, right? He breaks all these rules because of perseverance of love. That's what Jesus is saying to everybody who reads the story. Perseverance of God's love for us. That's what the Father does. Perseveres. Now, in this story, we have to ask ourselves, now that we are older and wiser, here's my should. Doesn't that sound like the older brother? My should. We should be people really involved in reconciliation all the time. We should be the ones that we don't say all the rules. We know them. But we break those rules that the culture throws out and says, I'm going to put love and grace before this other stuff. I'm going to go to the older brother who's resentful, and I'm going to find a way to bring the family back together again. I think that's the goal of this passage. It's for you and me together to find ways in our family, to find ways in our neighborhood, to find ways wherever we are. We know those rules, but we're going to put those behind us. Our love that comes from God, the grace that comes from God, that happiness that comes from God because we've been reconciled is going to shine forth, and we're going to be able to listen to other people, to love them the way God loves them. We're going to go to them and we're going to listen to the nonsense they throw out, and we're going to speak the truth in love. We're going to find ways to reconcile our families, our neighborhoods, the world if we can. Do I hear an amen? Amen. Thanks be to God. May it be so.